Have you ever felt like your heart was being ripped from your chest? That moment when you realize you won't see your daughter walk down the aisle on her wedding day. That was me 5 years ago. But what happened next shocked even a battle-hardened Green Beret like myself. Stay with me. This story isn't just about loss. It's about the brotherhood that changed everything when I needed it most. Welcome to Honor Echoes, where we share the untold stories of military veterans who faced battles both on and off the field. Before I dive into today's emotional journey, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. If you want more raw, powerful stories about the bonds that transcend the battlefield and touch our civilian lives in extraordinary ways. 22 years in Special Forces teaches you how to face almost anything. Gunfire, explosions, the chaos of combat. I'd been trained to handle it all, but nothing, absolutely nothing prepared me for the email I received on a quiet Thursday morning in April 2018. Dad, I'm sorry. Mom and Richard won't allow you at the wedding. They've threatened to cancel everything if I try to include you. I don't know what to do. My daughter Ellie's words hit harder than any IED ever could. I remember sitting at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop screen, feeling my hands shake as I read those words over and over. The coffee in my mug went cold. Outside, just another spring day in North Carolina. Inside my home, inside my heart, a storm was raging. Ellie and I had always been close, even after the divorce. When I returned from Afghanistan in 2006, my marriage was already hanging by a thread. My ex-wife Caroline couldn't understand the man who came home. Truthfully, I barely recognized myself. The nightmares, the hypervigilance, the inability to talk about what I'd seen. It all created a wall between us that grew taller with each passing day. The divorce was messy. Carolyn remarried quickly, a successful businessman named Richard who made it clear from day one that he wanted to replace me in every way possible. But Ellie and I maintained our bond, despite the tension. Weekend visits, phone calls. I never missed a birthday or a school event when I was stateside. When she got into UNC Chapel Hill, I was the one who drove her to campus and helped her move into her dorm, even though Caroline objected. And now Ellie was getting married to Michael, a young naval officer she'd met during her senior year. I'd only met him twice, but he seemed like a good man, respectful, loved my daughter, asked for my blessing even though he knew the situation with Caroline and Richard was complicated. I gave it gladly. The wedding was planned for June at a vineyard in Virginia. I'd already reserved my hotel room and bought a new suit, my first since retiring from the Army. I'd even practiced a short speech for the reception, not wanting to embarrass Ellie with too many emotions, but needing her to know how proud I was of the woman she'd become. And now this, blocked from attending by the same man who'd been trying to erase me from my daughter's life for years. Richard had always been threatened by my relationship with Ellie, and Caroline enabled his behavior, perhaps seeing it as loyalty to her new marriage. Together, they'd created this impossible situation for my daughter. I sat for a long time at that kitchen table. My training told me to respond with a level head, to think strategically, but this wasn't a mission. This was my little girl's wedding day, and I was being told to stay away. I called Ellie immediately. "It's your day," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't want you to worry about me. If my presence is going to cause problems, then I'll respect your decision either way." She cried. I fought back tears myself, something I hadn't done since we buried Thompson in Arlington after he took shrapnel meant for me near Kandahar. "It's not fair, Dad," she said, "but they're paying for everything, and Mom says if I don't follow their wishes, they'll cancel the venue, the caterers, everything. Michael's family doesn't have the money to help, and we've already sent the invitations." What could I say? I wanted to rage against Caroline and Richard, to demand my rightful place at my daughter's side, but I knew that would only make things worse for Ellie. So I swallowed my pride, my anger, my heartbreak. I understand, sweetheart. This day is about you and Michael, not about the bad blood between me and your mom and stepdad. I want you to have the perfect wedding day you deserve. After we hung up, I sat in silence for nearly an hour. Then I did something I rarely allowed myself to do. I picked up the phone and called for backup. Captain James Wilcox, Wilco to everyone who served with him, had been my team leader during 2 tours. Now retired and running a security consulting firm in Fayetteville, he answered on the second ring. "Jackson," he said, his voice as gruff as ever. "Been a while." I hadn't meant to tell him everything, but somehow, sitting there in my empty house, the whole story spilled out. The wedding. Caroline and Richard. Ellie's heartbreak, my own. Wilco listened without interrupting, a skill he'd perfected during countless mission briefings where every detail mattered. "That's some heavy shit, brother," he said when I finished. "But don't worry, we're not letting this stand." "There's nothing to be done," I replied. "I can't make a scene and ruin Ellie's day." "Who said anything about a scene?" Wilco's voice had that tone I recognized from our days in the field, the one that meant he was formulating a plan. "Give me a week, don't do anything, just sit tight." I didn't have much hope, but I trusted Wilco with my life countless times before. What was one more time? 5 days later, my doorbell rang at 0600 hours. I opened it to find Wilco standing there in jeans and a t-shirt, a cup of coffee in his hand. "Get dressed," he said. "We're meeting the team for breakfast." "What team?" "Just get dressed, Jackson." 20 minutes later, we walked into a private room at a diner just outside Fort Bragg. Sitting around a large table were 5 men I hadn't seen together in years, the remaining members of ODA 7115, my Special Forces team from Afghanistan. Martinez, our communications specialist, now working for a defense contractor. Thompson, our medic with a private practice in Charlotte. Rivera, weapons sergeant, teaching tactical training to police departments. And Cooper, our intelligence sergeant, who'd gone federal and couldn't talk about what he did now. Before I could say a word, Wilco pushed me into a chair and slid a plate of eggs and bacon in front of me. "Eat first," he said. Then we brief. Old habits die hard. I ate while the others made small talk about families, jobs, mutual acquaintances from our service days. No one mentioned why we were really there until every plate was clean and the waitress had refilled our coffee cups and left us alone. Wilco pulled out a folder, actual paper like the old days before everything went digital, and laid it on the table. "Operation Father's Blessing," he announced, and I nearly choked on my coffee. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious," Martinez said, leaning forward. "We've got intel, logistics, and a tactical plan." For the next hour, they laid it out for me. They'd done reconnaissance on the wedding venue. They'd spoken to Michael, my future son-in-law, who was fully on board. They'd even managed to get the wedding planner involved, a former Army nurse whose brother had served in the 101st Airborne. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I wouldn't attend the ceremony itself, keeping my promise to Ellie about not creating conflict. But afterward, during the reception, they would create a moment that Caroline and Richard couldn't prevent without making themselves look petty in front of all the guests. "This is insane," I said when they finished. "You can't just hijack a wedding reception." "We're not hijacking anything," Cooper replied. "We're ensuring that a father gets to share a moment with his daughter on her wedding day. A moment that every father deserves." "And if Caroline and Richard object?" I asked. Rivera grinned. "They won't. Not with 5 Green Berets and a room full of witnesses. Social pressure is a hell of a weapon, brother." I looked around the table at these men, my brothers in all but blood, men I'd fought alongside, bled with, trusted with my life. Men who were now plotting to give me back a piece of my daughter's life that had been taken from me. I don't know what to say, I admitted. Say yes, Wilco replied. Say you're in. How could I refuse? The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. I stuck to my promise and didn't contact Ellie about the wedding. Though we talked about other things when she called, I didn't want to put her in an awkward position or give her something she'd have to lie to her mother about. Cooper used his contacts to get eyes on the final wedding arrangements without alerting Caroline or Richard. Martinez coordinated with Michael through an encrypted messaging app. Thompson prepared what he called contingency measures in case Richard tried to physically intervene, though he assured me they were non-violent solutions. And through it all, I tried to keep my hopes in check. This could still go wrong in 100 different ways. Ellie might be angry that we'd planned this without telling her. Carolyn might cause a scene that would ruin the reception. Richard might somehow discover our plan and change the venue at the last minute. The day of the wedding arrived. June 16th, a perfect Saturday with clear blue skies and a gentle breeze. According to Cooper's intelligence, the ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m., with the reception to follow at 6 in the vineyard's main hall. At 7:30 p.m., dressed in my new suit with a boutonniere that matched the wedding colors, information provided by the sympathetic wedding planner, I sat in an SUV in the parking lot, surrounded by my former teammates, all similarly dressed in suits that did little to disguise the warriors beneath. Nervous? Nah, Wilco asked as we watched guests mingling on the terrace outside the reception hall. Terrified, I admitted. What if she doesn't want this surprise? Thompson put a hand on my shoulder. Brother, that girl has been trying to find a way to include you in this day since the beginning. Trust me on this. At precisely 8 p.m., Rivera's phone buzzed with a text message from Michael. We're a go, he announced. DJ is queuing up the father-daughter dance. That's our signal. We moved as a unit, just like old times. 5 men in suits, walking with purpose toward the reception hall. At the entrance, a young woman I recognized as one of Ellie's college friends was waiting as planned. Everything's ready, she whispered, handing me a small box. Inside was a corsage matching Ellie's bouquet. She has no idea. The hall was dimly lit, with twinkling lights strung across the ceiling and candles on every table. A dance floor had been cleared in the center, and as we entered, the DJ's voice came over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a special tradition. Would the bride please come to the dance floor for the father-daughter dance? I saw her then. My Ellie, radiant in her white dress, looking around in confusion. Caroline was at a table near the front, her face showing a mixture of satisfaction and discomfort. Richard sat beside her, smug in his expensive suit, clearly expecting Ellie to call him to the floor as the stand-in. Michael, bless him, stood beside Ellie, whispering something in her ear. Her eyes widened, and she turned toward the entrance where we stood. Our eyes met across the room, and everything else faded away. The music started. What a wonderful world, the song I used to play for her on my old record player when she was little. Without a word, my team fanned out around me. Wilco and Martinez positioned themselves subtly between Carolyn's table and the dance floor. Thompson and Rivera moved to either side, creating a corridor between Ellie and me. Cooper stayed by the entrance, eyes scanning the room for any sign of trouble. I stepped forward, and the guests began to notice. Whispers spread through the crowd. I saw confusion on some faces, recognition on others, friends of Ellie's who knew who I was, who knew I should have been there all along. Caroline half rose from her seat, but Wilco was there, offering her a glass of champagne with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Richard made to stand, but Martinez casually shifted his position, blocking his path without seeming to do so. Classic containment tactics, executed flawlessly in tuxedos instead of tactical gear. I reached the edge of the dance floor. Ellie stood frozen in the center, tears streaming down her face. "Dad," she whispered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "How?" "I hope it's okay," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't miss this moment." She flew into my arms then, heedless of her dress or the watching crowd. I held my daughter close, feeling her tears wet my jacket, knowing my own were falling freely. "I wanted you here so badly," she sobbed against my shoulder. "I know, sweetheart, I know." "Oh," the music continued, and gently I guided her into the dance steps we'd practiced years ago in our living room, when she'd stand on my feet and I'd waltz her around the furniture. She remembered, following my lead as naturally as if we'd danced together yesterday. Around us, the room had gone completely silent except for the music. Every eye was on us, the father who'd been excluded, the daughter who'd been forced to choose, and the moment of love that transcended the pettiness that had kept us apart. As we turned, I caught glimpses of the room. Michael, watching with a proud smile. My teammates, positioned strategically around the floor, their faces showing a mixture of vigilance and emotion. Caroline, her face unreadable, sitting rigidly in her chair. And Richard, red-faced but immobile, knowing any move to stop this would make him the villain in a room full of witnesses. "Your friends," Ellie whispered, nodding toward Wilco. "They did this for you?" "For us," I corrected her. "They understand what it means to be there for family, no matter what." The song was ending too quickly. I hadn't realized how short 3 minutes could be when they contained a moment you'd been denied and thought lost forever. As the final notes played, I prepared to step back, to return to the shadows and let Ellie continue her celebration without causing more drama. But she held my hand tightly. "Wait," she said. Then, raising her voice so everyone could hear, she added, "Everyone, this is my father, Sergeant Major David Jackson, retired Green Beret. The man who taught me what courage looks like. The man who should have been walking me down the aisle today." A murmur went through the crowd. I saw Michael step forward to join us, shaking my hand firmly before putting his arm around Ellie. "And these men," Ellie continued, gesturing to my teammates, "are his brothers from Special Forces. They made sure my father could be here tonight when others tried to keep him away." I hadn't expected this, hadn't wanted to put Ellie in this position. But seeing the determination in her eyes, I recognized the same strength I'd always tried to instill in her. She was making her own choice, consequences be damned. From the corner of my eye, I saw Caroline rise from her table and hurry from the room, Richard following after a moment's hesitation. Their departure created a ripple through the crowd, but Ellie didn't even turn to watch them go. Instead, she faced the room full of friends and family and said, "My father will be staying for the rest of the reception. Anyone who has a problem with that is welcome to join my mother and stepfather outside." Not a single person moved. What followed was one of the most extraordinary evenings of my life. Guests came up to introduce themselves, Michael's family, Ellie's friends, colleagues from her job. I danced with Ellie again later in the evening. I shook Michael's father's hand and found common ground in our Navy and Army experiences. I even got to give the speech I'd practiced, though it was shorter and more emotional than I'd planned. And through it all, my team was there, mingling with guests, charming the bridesmaids, telling carefully edited stories about our time together overseas, always maintaining a protective perimeter around me, around Ellie, around the celebration that I'd almost missed. It was nearly midnight when the reception began to wind down. Ellie found me on the terrace, looking up at the stars. "Thank you," she said simply, leaning her head against my shoulder like she used to do as a little girl. "I should be thanking you," I replied. "And Michael, and the guys. I never meant to complicate your day." "You didn't complicate it," she said firmly. "You completed it. Mom and Richard will get over it. Or they won't. Either way, I'm done letting them dictate who can be part of my life." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment before she spoke again. "Your friends, they really love you, don't they?" I looked back through the windows to where my teammates were helping the staff clean up, laughing and joking as they stacked chairs and collected centerpieces. "Brotherhood doesn't end when the uniform comes off," I told her. "That's something civilians sometimes don't understand. What we went through together, it creates a bond that nothing can break." "I'm glad you have them," she said. "Me too." I hugged her close. "And I'm glad I have you." The next morning, my team and I met for breakfast before going our separate ways. No one mentioned Caroline or Richard, who had apparently left the venue shortly after their exit from the reception. No one needed to rehash the operation. It had been executed flawlessly, mission accomplished. Instead, we talked about Ellie, about Michael, about the future. Thompson's daughter was starting college in the fall. Martinez's son had just made the varsity baseball team. Cooper was considering retirement from government work. Rivera was expanding his training business to 3 new states. Life was moving forward for all of us. But the bond remained. As we said our goodbyes in the parking lot, Wilco pulled me aside. "You good?" he asked, the question containing a world of meaning between 2 men who'd seen each other at their best and worst. "Yeah," I said, surprised to realize it was true. "I think I am." He nodded, satisfied. "Good, because Ellie texted me this morning. She and Michael want us all at their place for Thanksgiving. Said something about making new family traditions." I laughed, feeling a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. "I guess we better be there." "Damn right," Wilco agreed. "Can't disobey a direct order from your daughter." 5 years have passed since that wedding day. Ellie and Michael now have a 2-year-old son named James, after Wilco. Caroline eventually apologized, though Richard never did. The relationship remains strained, but civil for Ellie's sake. My team still meets regularly. We've stood together through Rivera's divorce, Cooper's cancer scare, and Thompson's son's deployment. Some bonds can never be broken, forged as they were in the crucible of shared sacrifice and unwavering loyalty. And every year on June 16th, I receive 5 text messages, one from each of my brothers, all saying the same thing. "Mission accomplished, brother. Over and out." Because some missions never truly end, and the most important ones, the ones about family, about love, about being there when it matters most, those are the missions that define us long after the uniform is packed away. That day changed my life forever, not just because I got to share that dance with my daughter, but because it reminded me of the unbreakable bonds formed in service to our country. Here at Honor Echoes, we believe these stories deserve to be told. If you were moved by this journey, hit that subscribe button now. Join our community where we honor the sacrifices, celebrate the triumphs, and share the human stories behind the uniform. Drop a comment below if you've experienced the power of military brotherhood in your own life. I read every single one. Until next time, this is Honor Echoes, where every veteran's story finds its voice.